In the studio with me now is the woman at the very heart of the story, Jocelin Weiss, who's come into the studio. So thank you for coming. May I call you Jocelyn? Is that okay?
Yes, go for it.
Talk us through what happened on Saturday. You got up and you decided to take Barbara you wanted to go see. Take me through the timeline.
Sure. So basically, for the past several months, like most in the Jewish community, I had been going out of my way to avoid these marches, especially on weekends, and avoid central London on weekends. And I kind of decided a few weeks ago that I wanted to stop being scared and start laughing at these people. And so a couple of weeks prior, I went with basically an Israeli filmmaker who isn't even Jewish but is Israeli to look at one of these marches. And it was on its surface kind of peaceful, but they were handing out all this hate literature. And so I thought a couple weeks afterward, I just wanted to sort of assess the situation.
Are you, do you make documentaries? Are you a journalist or an author?
Yes,
or
I'm young. I kind of just finished school for this stuff.
Sure. Okay.
So I really only made, I'm new in my career.
Okay, but you want to work in media. This sort of line is something you're interested in.
I want to document this stuff.
Okay, so back we go. Yeah.
Yes. So on the day, I went to sort of try and, I guess, counter-protest. But really, I wanted to see if anyone would go off with me to see if I could ask these people some questions. And I assumed that maybe
what
later
sort of questions might you want to ask them, Jocelyn?
I wanted to see, because they keep saying they're criticizing the Israeli government. So I wanted to ask them, what are your thoughts on the Knesset? Or what are your thoughts on, because they obviously have no literacy in this regard at all in regards to basic civics in the Middle East. So
your sense is they might be a little bit blinded here. They don't have full knowledge. Okay.
And so I wanted to try that out. But this was, I saw a lot of that sort of man-on-street reporting in New York, but this was a lot scarier than that. I mean, this was not like the protest I had gone to 2 weeks ago where anyone could have mistaken it for a peace march. This was a totally different beast of a thing.
In what way?
It was just so... No one could have been confused as to whether this was a hate march or not. It was so blatantly a hate. I mean, the signs.
Tell me why you... by the way, I'm not disagreeing with you. I just need to know why you perceived it as hate. Yeah. I wasn't there, so I don't know. You've got to help me. Why would you see it as hate?
Well, first of all, if you bring Jeremy Corbyn out to speak, who's been removed from his position over anti-Semitism allegations, it doesn't really lend much to your case of your event not being anti-Semitic, for one. I think that's blindingly obvious. The other thing is, again, all of these signs, first of all, any sign with a swastika, there was a sign that said, honor the martyrs of Palestine, the martyrs, like the suicide bombers. That's crazy. That's so blatantly pro-terrorist. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. But also, I want to point out, there's been a conversation happening about extremism, but no one's really talked about a group that has a heavy hand here at these marches, and it's the International Socialist Tendency. And they distribute a lot of this hate literature that take these into hate marches.
What is hate literature? Tell me what you saw that was hate literature.
Pamphlets, newspapers, they have, there's so many booths, the Socialist Worker, they have, and they hand out all this stuff about how, Israel is the root of all evil and Jews are all the root of all evil. And this is not Nazi-type anti-Semitism. It's like Soviet-type anti-Semitism. It's Trotskyism. It's Marxism mixed in with all this anti-Semitic stuff. But I haven't seen this group discussed at all. Obviously, there was quite a presence from, the Muslim community, the more extremist end of it. But there was quite a heavy presence from the Socialist Tendency as well. Okay. And I haven't seen that discussed as much.
Now let's talk through the
day.
Yes.
But so I was walking along, and again, I just see so many Socialist Tendency, Socialist Worker, hate material. I get to the band shell, and I hear people talk, and I just hear them saying the craziest things about Israel that I've ever heard. And then I hear Corbyn talk, and I actually can't believe this is really happening. And again, I walked past the swastika guy. I talked to him and I asked him questions, and he said, he got it from a march a few weeks prior, that someone had printed a whole bunch of them out and handed them out, which again...
What did the placard show?
It was a picture of a few politicians. I think it was Rishi Sunak, Joe Biden, and Netanyahu, who, again, I don't even like. But they pictured him with a Hitler mustache and a tie with a swastika on it, which is insane. That's just so blatantly anti-Semitic. As
a young Jewish woman, when you see a swastika, what goes through your mind?
Well, the generational trauma kicks in, that's for sure. I was disturbed, but I just couldn't believe that was real life, because, part of me wanted to believe, social media has exaggerated this. Maybe there is confusion. Because, again, the march that I went to a couple weeks prior, if you didn't look at what they were handing out, you would have thought it was a peace march. And I thought, well, you know, maybe they just don't know that this symbol is Hamas and not pro-Palestine. It's Hamas specifically. But no, this was a swastika, right? And I kind of felt hopeless, and I found a police officer, because that's what I was told we were supposed to do if we saw anti-Semitic signs. And I had to sort of go up the line. I spoke to him. He said, oh, I don't have the authority to arrest this person. You have to talk to this other officer. So then I talked to this other officer near where the counter protests were. I keep going up the line, up the line, up the line. And then I get to the guy with the lapel, and I had been told by person after person, oh, well, it needs to be put in context.
Yes.
And at this point, my phone's dead. I asked someone to film it because I actually can't believe what I've been told. And I had thought maybe at any point they would have backtracked and said, oh, well, no, I'll go with you. Perhaps, okay, this doesn't need context. But no, he basically brought out a metaphorical shovel and kept digging the hole deeper and deeper and deeper.
What do you take from the suggestion that we need to put context to this, Jocelin? How do you respond to that?
I agree with what you said earlier. I think that there is some sort of lapse in communication and a gap in training and a lack of literacy in regards to anti-Semitic symbols and tropes. But the fact that he said, oh, I'm not a master of signs and symbols, you don't need to be a master of semiotics to recognize what a swastika means.
The Met, London Met, have said subsequently the man was arrested. You're aware of that?
They haven't gotten in touch with me to say that, and I'm not exactly hard to get in touch with. I certainly wouldn't be here if I was.
They've made no contact with you since Saturday?
No, none. And not that I'd be all that relaxed if I got a call from the police, but, you know, the fact of the matter is they certainly did not offer to go with him to arrest the guy. They were pretty, I think, tired out from the day. I think that, you know, they wanted to stay where they were. In fact, they said, well, we can't leave from our post. We can't join you. And I would like to just respond to the education secretary. I find it very comical for them to criticize labor over this, because if there's one thing I want to commend, you know, having been a Jew in New York and now a Jew in London, like, Keir Starmer has done so much more to combat this issue, at least in efforts, compared to Joe Biden. So the fact that she's criticizing labor over this is comical to me, I have to say.
I have to say the Met have said subsequently that man was arrested. What level of comfort, if any, does that give you?
I'm not sure I buy it. If they have arrested him, great. I've also heard people say they arrested him and then the protesters surrounded him and chanted that they needed to release him. I've heard multiple conflicting things, but they have not reached out to me. And I think that...
Would you welcome the opportunity to speak with the Met, with the police about this? Maybe.
If it was accompanied by an apology, yeah, I would. But I don't want my remarks to be misrepresented. But I would welcome them getting in touch with an apology.
You're obviously very close to this, so you'll be aware that there have been other demos where there have been slogans have been carried, chants have been made, and indeed there was a projection up the side of Big Ben. It would seem to me that the police need some kind of educational training or a different stance on this. Where are you on that, Jocelin? I
am in complete agreement with you. I think it's a lack of literacy. Again, as I said in another interview, I wasn't educated in British schools. I live here now. I really do love London, but I don't know what education there is in regards to literacy on this issue. But clearly there's a gap. I think there need to be, bias training program or anti-bias training programs in regards to anti-Semitism with the Met, because there's clearly a lapse in communication and a lapse in this training. Whether that comes from, the CST or I'm not sure, but I think that there needs to be a training in this regard because there's a lack of education.
Okay, so let's move towards the conclusion. You hear that there's going to be a demo this coming weekend or 2 weekends' time or whatever. Will you go again?
I don't know. That was a lot for me. I'm not going to lie. I'd have to think about it quite heavily. I think as far as the counter-protesting, they need to be appealing to a younger audience. We need some drums and some chants that rhyme, and it's all a bit old and cringy, and that needs to be worked on. I'd think about it. I'm not sure.
And just lastly, when we started out on the conversation, you said that you wanted to go see them and to laugh at them. What did you mean by that?
What I mean by that is I think that the London Jewish community could use a little laughter. These days, and I think these people, I think some of these people have so much hate in their hearts. I think a lot of them are uneducated. Mm-hmm. I think it's both.
You feel safe as a Jewish woman in London?
Yeah, I do.
Safer in London than you did in Boston or New York, or on the same level?
In different ways. I think about the same level, really.
Okay.
I think I do feel safe. I don't feel safe where these protests are.
Sure.
And like it's sort of an existential question. But I don't think, all of central London is a no-go zone all the time. No. I think, but these marches are out of control. That's what I'm saying.
Thank you for coming by the studio. Jocelin Weiss is the Jewish woman who's at the heart of that story. She's a freelance documentary filmmaker. You've just heard her here on LBC, where it's time for the latest news headlines, 8:19.